Olivia didn't know that the masked stranger who caught her when she stumbled on the icy palace steps would spend the next 3 days turning his kingdom upside down to find her. She only knew that his hands were warm, his eyes behind the silver mask burned like molten gold, and that she needed to disappear before midnight revealed what she truly was. The winter ball at Valdres Castle happened once every 5 years, and for one night, the gates opened to everyone. Nobles and commoners alike could don masks and pretend the rigid walls between their worlds didn't exist. For one night, a seamstress's daughter could walk the same marble floors as princes. Olivia had sewn her own gown from scraps of midnight blue velvet, piecing together what wealthy clients had discarded. The mask she wore was her mother's, delicate silver filigree that had somehow survived the fire that took everything else. And the gloves, white silk that reached past her elbows, those she had saved 3 months of wages to buy because she refused to enter the palace with her work-roughened hands on display. She didn't belong here. She knew that. But her mother had told her stories of this ball since childhood, had described the chandeliers dripping with crystals, the orchestra that played until dawn, the way the entire kingdom seemed to hold its breath in wonder. Her mother had danced here once, before poverty and illness had stolen everything soft from their lives. So Olivia had come, just to see, just to carry one beautiful memory into whatever gray years stretched ahead. She hadn't counted on him. The steps were treacherous, coated in a thin layer of ice that the servants hadn't yet salted. One moment she was ascending toward the golden light spilling from the open doors, and the next her feet slipped out from under her. She braced for impact, for humiliation, for the crack of her skull against stone. Instead, strong arms caught her, pulled her upright, steadied her against a chest that felt like a wall of warm muscle beneath fine wool. Careful. The voice was low, rough-edged, as if its owner wasn't accustomed to speaking gently. Olivia looked up and forgot how to breathe. He was tall. That was her first thought. So tall she had to crane her neck to meet his eyes behind his mask. The mask itself was silver, simpler than most she'd seen, covering only the upper half of his face. But his eyes, they were the color of aged gold, and they fixed on her with an intensity that made her stomach flip. His jaw was sharp, shadowed with stubble. His hair was dark, nearly black, swept back from his face but with a few strands falling forward as if they refused to be tamed. He wore no crown, no obvious markers of rank, just a black coat that fit his broad shoulders like it had been made by the gods themselves. "I thank you." Her voice came out breathless. Foolish. The ice. The ice. Something that might have been amusement flickered in those golden eyes. His hands were still on her waist, large hands, warm through the fabric of her gown. "Perhaps you should hold on to something more stable." Before we continue, please take 2 seconds to like this video. It tells me you want more stories like this. I'm perfectly capable of walking on my own. The words came out sharper than she intended. Defense mechanism. She'd learned long ago that men who looked like this one, powerful, beautiful, dangerous, were not to be trusted with vulnerability. But instead of taking offense, his lips curved. Just slightly. A smile that transformed his severe face into something devastating. "I don't doubt it." He released her waist but offered his arm instead. "But humor me. The steps claim at least 3 victims every ball. I'd hate for you to become a statistic." She should have walked away. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to disappear into the crowd before this stranger could see past her mask and her borrowed elegance to the nobody beneath. Instead, she placed her hand on his arm. His muscle tensed beneath her touch. Just for a moment. Just long enough for her to notice. "Do you have a name?" he asked as he guided her up the remaining steps with an ease that suggested he'd walked them 1,000 times. "Do you?" she countered. That almost smile again. Tonight? No. That's rather the point of the masks, isn't it? Then I'm no one as well. They passed through the doors into warmth and light and music, and Olivia's breath caught all over again. The grand ballroom was everything her mother had described, and more. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow fractals across the crowd. The orchestra played something sweeping and romantic from the gallery above. Couples in jewel-toned gowns and perfectly tailored coats swept across the dance floor in elegant patterns. And everywhere, masks, gilded masks and feathered masks and masks studded with gems. Behind them, identities dissolved. The merchant's son could dance with the duchess. The stable hand could share wine with the earl. "It's beautiful," she whispered before she could stop herself. The stranger looked down at her. In the chandelier light, his eyes seemed to glow. "It is now." Her cheeks heated beneath her mask. "That's a rather forward thing to say to no one." "Perhaps." He steered her away from a cluster of giggling debutantes. "But you're the first person I've wanted to speak to all evening." "You've been here all evening? Alone?" "Not alone. Just—" He paused, seemed to search for the word. "Separate. These events require my attendance. They don't require my enthusiasm." Require. The word snagged at her attention. Common folk weren't required to attend royal balls. But before she could pursue the thought, he turned to face her fully. "Dance with me." It wasn't a question, but it wasn't quite a demand either. Something in between, as if he was so unaccustomed to asking for anything that he'd forgotten how. "I don't even know your name," she protested weakly. "Kael." He said it like a confession. "For tonight, call me Kael." "That's not your real name." "No." His golden eyes held hers. "But it's the name I'll give you. Dance with me, mystery woman. Let me pretend for one night that I'm just a man at a ball." And God help her, she let him lead her onto the floor. Kael danced like he did everything else, with controlled power and an intensity that stole her breath. His hand on her waist burned through her gown. His other hand engulfed hers, and even through her glove she could feel the calluses on his palm. Working hands, she realized. Whatever else this man was, he wasn't soft. "You dance well," he murmured against her temple as they swept into a turn. "My mother taught me. She used to come to these balls before." "Before?" The old grief stirred. Serafina pushed it down. "Before life happened." Something shifted in his expression. "Ah, yes. Life has a way of taking things." "Speaking from experience?" His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "My parents died when I was 17. My uncle raised me, taught me." A pause. "Prepared me for the role I never wanted." The vulnerability in his voice made her chest ache. She understood that weight, that sense of being shaped by loss into someone you never chose to become. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "About your parents. It was a long time ago." But his arm tightened around her, pulling her closer. "You're the first person in years who said that like they meant it." "How do other people say it?" "Like they're calculating how to use my grief to their advantage." Serafina looked up at him sharply. His golden eyes were unreadable behind the mask, but she saw the tension in his shoulders, the careful way he held himself. This was a man who trusted no one, who couldn't afford to. "People are cruel," she said simply. "Some are." His gaze dropped to her mouth, lingered there. "Others dance with strangers and make them forget, just for a moment, how heavy the crown feels." Crown. The word hit her like ice water. She stumbled, just slightly, but he caught her effortlessly and kept them moving as if nothing had happened. "Kael isn't your real name," she breathed. "No. You're him. The king." His hand flexed against her waist. "Tonight I'm just a man who wanted to dance with a beautiful woman without her seeing a throne instead of a person." Panic clawed at her throat. She was dancing with the Alpha King of Valdris, the most powerful man in 6 kingdoms, the warrior who had ended the border wars with blade and blood and sheer ruthless brilliance, the king who was said to be searching for a bride, though no woman had caught his interest despite 2 years of balls and arranged introductions. And she was, what? A seamstress's daughter in a dress made of scraps, a commoner who had no business touching royalty, let alone letting him hold her like she was made of something precious. I need to go. She tried to pull away. His arm tightened. Not painful, but immovable. Why? Because this is I can't. Can't what? His voice dropped, became rough with something that sounded almost like desperation. Dance with me? Talk to me? Look at me like I'm human instead of a symbol? You've done all 3 brilliantly. Why stop now? Because I'm no one. The words tore from her throat. I don't belong here. I'm not someone you should be dancing with. He stopped moving. The other couples swirled around them like water around stones, but Kael stood perfectly still, his golden eyes burning into hers. I spent 2 hours tonight watching nobles parade their daughters past me like prized horses, he said quietly. Not one of them asked me a single question that wasn't designed to flatter or manipulate. Not one of them looked at me without calculation in their eyes. His hand came up to cup her jaw through her mask. And then you fell into my arms on the steps. And when I caught you, you looked at me like I was just a man who happened to be there. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How precious? I didn't know who you were. Exactly. His thumb traced her cheekbone. And now that you do, you want to run. That makes you the most honest person I've met in a decade. The orchestra shifted into a slower piece. Around them, couples drew closer together. Olivia became acutely aware of how little space existed between her body and his, how she could feel his breath against her forehead, how his heart beat steady and strong beneath her palm on his chest. Give me tonight, he murmured. Just tonight. Dance with me. Talk to me. Let me pretend that tomorrow I won't have to go back to being what everyone else needs me to be. She should say no. She should pull away, flee into the crowd, disappear before this went any further. Instead, she stepped closer. His exhale shuddered through them both. His arms wrapped around her and they began to move again, slower now, barely swaying. What's your name? He asked against her hair. Tonight? No one, remember? His laugh was quiet, warm. Then I'll call you mine. The word sent heat cascading through her veins. Mine. Possessive and tender and terrifying. That's rather presumptuous, she managed. Yes. He didn't sound remotely sorry. But you caught me, on those steps. You looked up at me with those silver eyes and something in my chest just clicked, like a lock finding its key. She knew exactly what he meant. She'd felt it too. That instant of recognition, as if some part of her had been waiting for this moment without knowing it. They danced through song after song. They talked about everything and nothing, about childhood memories and favorite books, and the way the snow looked falling past the castle windows. He told her about the pressure of leadership, the loneliness of power, the way he sometimes dreamed of walking away from it all. She told him about her mother, about sewing, about the small apartment above the tailor's shop where she'd learned that beauty could be created from scraps. And somewhere between the 3rd and 4th dance, she stopped being afraid. He made her laugh. He listened like her words mattered. He looked at her like she was the only person in a room of hundreds, and when his arm brushed against hers, she felt it like lightning in her blood. The clock began to chime. 11:30. Olivia jerked back. I have to go. What? Confusion flashed across his face. Why? I have to. Midnight was when the masks came off, when identities were revealed, when the fantasy ended and reality came crashing back. She couldn't let him see her face, couldn't let him discover that his mystery woman was nobody at all. The disappointment in his eyes would destroy her. She pulled away and ran. "Wait!" His voice carried over the crowd, sharp with something that might have been panic. "Wait, please!" But she was already weaving through the ballroom, dodging dancers and servants and clusters of gossiping nobles. Behind her, she heard him call out again, heard the confusion in the voices around her as the king, shoved through the crowd in pursuit. She reached the grand staircase and flew down it, her skirts clutched in one hand. The icy steps from earlier had been salted now, but she still moved too fast, and her foot caught on the final step. She stumbled, caught herself, kept running. Behind her, something fluttered to the ground. She didn't notice. She didn't stop. She disappeared into the night, into the snow, into the anonymous streets of the lower city, where no king would ever think to look for her. And on the palace steps, white silk gleaming against gray stone, a single glove lay abandoned. Kael reached it just as her figure vanished into the swirling snow. He stood there for a long moment, breathing hard, his heart hammering against his ribs. Then he bent and picked up the glove. It was simple, elegant, well made but not expensive, and it smelled faintly of lavender and something else. Something that made his wolf pace restlessly beneath his skin. Mate. The word crashed through him like a wave. He'd suspected it from the moment he caught her on the steps, but touching this glove, pressing it to his face and inhaling her scent, left no room for doubt. His mate had run from him. His mate didn't know what she was to him. His mate was somewhere in his kingdom, and he had nothing but a glove to find her. Kael turned and walked back into the palace with the glove clutched against his chest. His captain of the guard took one look at his face and straightened to attention. "Cancel my meetings tomorrow," Kael said quietly. "All of them. Your Majesty, I have something more important to do." The search began at dawn. Olivia heard about it from the baker's wife, who heard it from the butcher's son, who heard it from a servant at the castle. The king was looking for a woman. He had her glove, white silk, left behind on the palace steps. He was going house to house, hand to hand, searching for the woman who fit it. "It's like a fairy tale," the baker's wife sighed. "So romantic." Olivia kept her head down and said nothing. Her hands trembled as she sewed. Her remaining glove sat hidden beneath her mattress, a reminder of the night she'd been foolish enough to dance with a king. He'd find someone else, some noble lady whose hand was the right size, who could give him whatever a king needed. He'd forget about the masked stranger who talked too much and stumbled on steps. But day after day, the search continued. The king visited every manor in the upper city, then the merchant districts, then the craftsmen's quarters. No hand fit the glove, no scent matched. On the third day, Olivia opened the door of the tailor's shop to find a black carriage parked outside. Her heart stopped. The door of the carriage opened. A man stepped out, and even without the mask, she knew him instantly. He was even more devastating in daylight. Sharp cheekbones, full mouth, those impossible golden eyes. He wore a crown now, a simple circlet of silver, and his black coat bore the royal crest. But his expression, raw hope and desperate recognition, was the same as it had been on the ballroom floor. "It's you." His voice was hoarse. "I knew it. I could smell lavender and you, from the street. It's you. Your Majesty." She dropped into a curtsy, head bowed, hands hidden in her apron. "I don't know what you mean. Look at me." It wasn't a request. Alpha command rang through the words, but beneath it, she heard something else. Something that sounded like pleading. Slowly she raised her head. His eyes raked over her face, her hair, her work-roughened hands. And something in his expression cracked open. "You ran from me." He stepped closer. "Why?" "Because I'm nobody. I'm a seamstress's daughter. I don't belong in your world." "My world?" A sound escaped him, half laugh, half sob. My world has been empty for years. My world is duty and loneliness and people who want my crown, not me. And then you fell into my arms and looked at me like I mattered. And I finally felt. He reached into his coat and pulled out her glove. It was slightly crumpled now, as if he'd been carrying it close to his heart. This is yours. How did you know? She whispered. Because every other woman I tried it on felt wrong. Their hands fit, but they weren't you. Your scent wasn't there. Your laugh wasn't in their voices. He stepped closer still. Because you're my mate. I knew it the moment I touched you. I've been going out of my mind for 3 days trying to find you. Mate. The word echoed through her like thunder. That's not possible. I'm common. I'm nothing. You're everything. He took her hands, both of them, and held them against his chest. I don't care what blood runs in your veins or what house you come from. You're the woman who made me feel human for the first time in 10 years. You're the woman whose scent is imprinted on my soul. You're mine. Tears burned her eyes. You don't even know my name. Then tell me. His forehead dropped to rest against hers. Please. Tell me your name so I can spend the rest of my life saying it. Olivia. Her voice broke on the word. My name is Olivia. Olivia. He said it like a prayer. My Olivia. And then his mouth found hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tender, a question and an answer all at once. But when she gasped against his lips, when her hands fisted in his coat and pulled him closer, it transformed into something fiercer. He kissed her like he was drowning and she was air, like he'd spent his whole life in the cold and she was finally warmth. His hands cupped her face, tilted her head back, and when he pulled away just enough to breathe, his golden eyes were blazing. Come with me, he breathed. Come to the palace. Let me prove to you that this is real, that we're real. She should say no. She should think about this rationally, should consider all the reasons why a seamstress couldn't possibly become a queen. But his hands were warm on her face. His heart was racing beneath her palm. And when she looked in his eyes, she didn't see a king. She saw Kael. Just Kael. The man who'd caught her when she fell. Yes. 2 months later, on the first day of spring, Olivia stood on a balcony overlooking the kingdom she still couldn't quite believe was home. The coronation dress she wore was her own design, white silk and crystal beading that caught the light like scattered snowflakes. On her hands, white gloves that perfectly matched the one Kael had carried against his heart for 3 desperate days. Arms wrapped around her from behind, warm lips pressed against her temple. What are you thinking about? Kael murmured. The night we met. She leaned back into his chest. How I almost didn't go. How I almost didn't let myself dance with you. His arms tightened. I prefer not to think about that. It makes my wolf restless. She turned in his embrace, looping her arms around his neck. In the afternoon light, his crown gleamed, but it was his eyes she loved most. The way they softened when they looked at her. The way they burned when he wanted her. Tell me what you're thinking, she said. I'm thinking that I spent 2 years searching for a bride at balls and functions and arranged meetings. I tried on 100 gloves, metaphorically speaking. I resigned myself to a political marriage. His hands settled on her waist, thumbs stroking gentle circles. And then you fell into my arms on icy steps, and I finally understood what I'd been looking for. A clumsy seamstress? My mate. He kissed her forehead. My queen. He kissed her nose. My everything. He kissed her lips, slow and deep and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, Olivia was breathless. The council is going to be scandalized when they find out their queen is embroidering designs for the new textile guild instead of attending tea parties. Kael laughed, the sound warm and free in a way it never was in public. Let them be scandalized. You're the best thing that's ever happened to this kingdom. Besides, his grin turned wicked. I'm the king. If I want my wife to revolutionize the fashion industry from the palace, that's exactly what will happen. She stretched up to kiss him again, marveling at how natural it felt. How right. Below them, the city sparkled in the spring sunshine. Somewhere down there was the tailor's shop where she'd learned her trade, the apartment where she'd dreamed of a better life. She hadn't known, when she stepped into the winter ball in a dress made of scraps, that she would find this. Find him. Thank you, she whispered against his mouth. For what? For searching? For not giving up when the other gloves didn't fit. For wanting me even after you found out who I really was. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. His expression was fierce, protective, unbearably tender. I would have searched forever, he said simply. I would have tried every hand in every kingdom until I found yours. You're my mate, Olivia. My heart knew you the moment I touched you. The glove was just an excuse to tear my world apart looking for you. She blinked back tears. Happy ones this time. That's a lot of searching. You're worth it. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You'll always be worth it. Behind them, a servant cleared their throat apologetically. Your Majesties? The spring court is assembled. Kael sighed, but the corner of his mouth twitched. Duty calls? Duty always calls? But Olivia was smiling as she took his arm. They walked into the throne room together, and when she caught their reflection in the polished marble, she hardly recognized herself. The woman in the mirror wore silk and jewels and a crown that still didn't quite feel real. But her hand was tucked into her mate's elbow, and his eyes met hers in the reflection with such obvious devotion that her heart ached. She'd left a glove behind on icy steps. He'd searched every hand until he found hers. And now, together, they would write their own fairy tale, one stitch at a time. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts. And if you'd like to support me, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people hear these stories.